too frequently. Please try again in 30 seconds.
We're live, Dewey. I clicked it.
Oh, sorry. Hey, everybody. Welcome. It's Schmudgeon of Curmudgeon with me, Dewey Conway, and my very, very special guest. Well, not really guest, but for today's guest. Oh, I
Who's
can.
live? Who is live?
That's your you have YouTube up
Oh,
somewhere.
well, I did that last time, so I got rid of it. All right.
Dang it, we're professionals. let's turn off those YouTube tabs. Welcome, Bill Adams. Today we are celebrating the book release, the book birthday of the Godsblood Tragedy, which is Bill's first big epic fantasy book, which I'm super excited to be here to talk to him about. So today we're just going to talk about this and talk about a few other things, but I just want to turn it over to Bill and say, first of all, how you feeling, man? This is pretty incredible. How's it feel?
Dewey, I'll be honest with you. I'm doing good, but I'm tired. And it's been a long day, so we'll say that much. And just to get to this process, or just get to this point in the process, has been a journey, a very long journey that we'll go through here in this discussion. But spoiler alert: it's been 17 years since this book has been in the writing. So to get to this point is not only surreal, but I'm ready for it to be done. I'm ready to pass it on. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just I'm ready for it to be out and for people to access it and me to kind of, move past, I guess. Not
Right.
like saying it's the negative thing, like, oh, I'm done with it, I want to be over with it. But it's just like, okay.
Yeah.
Now we can move on.
It's really funny because it is 17 years in the making and it's nearly an adult, so to speak. So it's kind of like it's senior year, going to college, ready to turn them over into the world.
I mean, exciting. I've had this book longer than I've had my spouse. It's been with me for quite a long time. There's the cover. Yay.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Bob. Uncle Bob's here.
Oh, hey, Uncle Bob. Welcome. We're talking
Bob is great. He bought Tana, and he supported Tana.
Yes.
He bought it for his nephew or his niece and nephew, and stole it or will steal it. But I
recognize the rooster.
Yeah, the rooster. Yep. The cover. So the cover of the Godsblood Tragedy, which I'm very biased, but I think it's one of the coolest covers I've seen in a long time, traditional or self-published. I think it's phenomenal, but I'm biased. But it really is.
Who did the cover? Can you throw out there who did the cover for?
The cover is done by who I call the king, the goat, King Felix. His name's Felix Ortiz. He's just simply amazing. And I'm just super blessed to have been able to get on his schedule. Just a little bit of the guy is so busy with his covers and stuff. I actually had to schedule a year ago last April. So April 2023, I scheduled with him to get for a year, April 2024 to get this cover. Right. And, this book was ready then. Like, it was ready to go. And it was fun. It's funny. Tim agrees with me because me and him had talked about it. When you go into this self-publishing thing or the indie space, you kind of have this like weird mindset that things just happen, right away. Like, you just say, hey, I need a cover. And you talk to somebody and they're like, oh, 2 weeks later you have a cover and you're ready to go. No. um, it can happen that way, depending on where you go. But if you go with somebody that has a pretty good name like Felix Ortiz does, you're gonna wait a while. And I was perfectly fine waiting. I waited 17 years to get this book out. So what was an extra year at that point? Like I was willing to do it, and just by the love and gushing that I get from just people seeing this cover makes it 100% absolute worth it.
Yeah. I remember when you first got the cover in, and you showed it to me, and I thought, "Oh my god, this is perfect. It captures it perfectly." The world of Ash and Drenth and everything. It's just incredible what he did. One thing I will say is I remember how responsive he was too to like,
Oh yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
I really love that, but maybe tweak this and this, and he got your vision just right. So
Like
fantastic.
I'm shocked. Like the brief I gave him. So a little bit of backstory on the cover. Up at the top you can see it behind the title, which Dewey Conway did the title design right there. Dewey Conway.
Who?
Um, yeah, who? So in this book there is a giant floating fortress over this mega city, right? And I told him that I wanted this like forced perspective so you can see the bottom of this floating fortress, and this fortress is anchored by these giant chains across the city. So I was like, I want that, but I also want it to show the skyline, because this is a very science fantasy world. It's not just a regular medieval style world. There is magitech and all that stuff. So I was like, I want that, but then I also want it to be green because I have elemental magic in this world, and this specific book is based with earth style magic. And so I was like, it's got to be green, but then I want the main character, but then there's also dragons in there, so I got to have a dragon, and I need those spaceships or airships and stuff. And he's like, okay, I'll see what I can come up with. And in my head, I'm like, there's no way he's going to put this together.
Right.
And then he did. And I'm just like when he showed me just the sketch he did, I was like, my jaw hit the floor. I was like, this cannot be real.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, and that's going to lead into some questions about the book, because I think what's interesting is that, like you said, this book has been in the making for quite a while. And when I first met you 7 years ago, it was in a almost completely different form.
Different story.
Yeah, I mean, it had a lot of. I think the heart and soul was there. That still exists, but the story has changed since. But it's gone through a lot of reading, a lot of critique partners, but not, I mean, not a lot, but like 3 or 4 or so. But now having it out in the wild and it's in its grown up final form, that's got to be an incredible feeling. So um, I want to ask you though, for someone who may be watching this video or live or as it's recorded, and say, "Oh, I love the cover. I really want to get into it, but what's the story about? Why should I be interested in this?" So can you tell us a little bit about, or tell me a little bit about the story and how that all
No, I can't.
works?
I shouldn't. I shouldn't.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Goodbye,
Well,
everybody.
bye everybody. 17 years in the making. That's all it is. That's all you get.
Yeah.
Um, no, it's kind of hard to boil down into a little bit. And the reason why I say that is because it changed so much over the years. Before I get into like a little bit of the story, I want to mention today. So I'm part of this writers group called the Secret Scribes, right? And it's a group of authors that are either just getting into the indie scene or they're about to publish their first books, and we're all there to support each other. And we were all just kind of, someone found a meme or something about like this was my history writing it. And I'm like, yeah, guess what? I had to think about my 17 years. So I actually went through all my files, right, Dewey, of like all my writing files, and I
Oh, wow.
lined it up in timeline form, and it is ridiculous. Uh, it's 28 lines long, because those are the different drafts and versions that I wrote to get there. But to answer your question, and at what you said is when we first met, is the core of this story is still the same. And the most basic bare minimum idea I had, and that has been there since 2007 when I started writing this, was that there is a magical city where it was behind like a barrier, like a barrier couldn't get behind. It was sealed by seals, original. And there's, I'm a fan of Final Fantasy. Like Final Fantasy 10 and 12 are two of my favorite games. 12 specifically, with like the crystal magic and all that stuff. So that I had this idea of like in the magical city, the crystal of life is there, and it's trapped behind the barrier, and the bad guys trying to get in. So that's like the basis of this story, right? And it evolved in so many different ways over the years. Whereas now, the Godsblood Tragedy, this book in its final form that I just sent off to college today as an adult, is an amalgamation of multiple stories I wrote, where there is that still core prophecy, or that core premise, with a heist on the floating fortress to get said seal, one of the seals, to break the said seal of that magical city. And then it takes place in a single city where the world's fuel source is mined, which is a magic fuel source based out of the magic. And this is a city that is already owned by the villains. So the villains has already won. It happened 500 years in the past. This magical city crashed, and the world's different now, right? And the magic, or the villain, is still trying to get back into that magical city. And the only way you can do that is with our little chosen one, reluctant hero, Ash, who's on the main cover. And it's her destiny to break the seals, whether she likes it or not. But one of the things that's still part of the core that's original in my original draft is I wanted this to be kind of like a family saga almost, because I am a child of the Terry Brooks Shannara series. Like I grew up on Shannara, in my teenage years, and that is a familial story, a saga, of one or two families basically throughout the eons. And that's what I kind of wanted to do, was a family story. So this first book is very family based. But not a lot of good stuff happens to this family.
I was going to say,
unfortunately.
At its core, it's about family.
Yeah, right. It is. So
That's
cheers
cool.
to them.
Oh, yes. Ooh. Oh, shoot. I forgot mine. It's in the other room. Okay, I'm not going to go get it. So congratulations on opening up what you just showed me. You want to tell the audience about that little special treat?
Oh yeah. So I'm a Scotch fan. Tim will like this. But my favorite Scotch is Chivas Regal, and you can barely see it. I have a 25-year bottle that my best man gave me for my wedding 10 years ago. So this is a 35-year-old bottle of Scotch. So yeah, that's what I'm sipping on right now. Yeah. It's almost as old as me.
That's crazy. Well, I think if I'm a fan of epic fantasy, then I would definitely be a fan of this. Or what
Yeah,
We
well, yes and no. I mean, it is epic because it's a chunky book. um, Tim, it's the smoothest thing in the world. I've never had any smoother drink, by the way. That's why it's so good. But no, it is epic because this does span. I mean, it's like a long series where it spans, some generations. There are characters that are like that have been around for a long time, all that good stuff.
right.
It's also got my takes on the high and classic fantasy races, like elves, dwarfs. I have goblins in there. I threw all like the kitchen sink with all these characters, but I like made them my own, a little
Yeah.
bit of tweaks here and there. But this is definitely a dark fantasy. It's bloody. It's not grim dark because there is some hope. Not all the characters are morally bad or morally gray. Oh yeah, and let's not forget there are different types of dragons, lizard men. For Tim, I have 6 different types of dragons in this story. So that good discussion that we all had on the Twitter sphere last week about 2- and 4-legged dragons. They both exist in this world. And then there are dragons without limbs, so kind of like a verm, which is a big character or a big set of dragons in this book. And then I got the Draken, which are lizard people. Basically, they're like 7-8 foot tall anthropomorphic dragons that are kind of like humanoid. And then I got what I call the blood drakes. They're almost like serpents, but they use blood magic to steal the flesh of humans and stuff like that.
Oh my God.
So
Yes.
they're the dark ones. That's why I like them.
Well, I'm going to pause you right there because we are going to play a little game. It's
Uh-oh.
question time for you.
Uh-oh.
So, Bill, no, these are safe questions. You know me, I'm all
Oh, I
focused.
know you're safe.
Yeah, I do safe questions, but I want you then, 'tis question time, to choose a number, and I will go and show that question, and you must answer it. This is your destiny, Bill. Choose 1 to 10. Don't maybe get out a spinner.
Well, let's go with is number 10 a dragon?
That's a dragon.
We'll go with that one since we were just talking about the dragons.
All right. Number 10. Do you have any hidden talents or weird skills that not many people know about? And I want to know.
I don't really think so.
Really?
No, I have like no musical talent, which is surprising because like I can't keep rhythm, but I'm a pretty good dancer. Back in the day, I used to do the Dougie quite a lot, and I was pretty damn good at it. I could teach you how to Dougie if you wanted me to, Dewey, but I'm not going to do it right now.
No, not right now. We'll save that for later.
Yeah, we'll do that later. But I have no musical talent, which is okay. I used to be able to draw, but I lost that skill apparently over the last 10 years. It transitioned to writing, which I'll definitely take.
Okay.
Yeah, not really. No, it's not a good question. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's I didn't know. I thought you would, because you did all the on your books, on these hardcovers that you sent out for the pre-orders. You did this painting and
I don't know if putting a wax seal on an envelope is a hidden talent, but
well, I thought it was cool. So, okay, well, fine. All right. So that's my question. So we have 1 through 9 left, but we're not going to do it now. I'm going to bring these up every now and then, just to kind of keep your mind fresh. But we are talking about the Godsblood Tragedy. For my talentless friend.
yeah,
Bill
I have
Adams.
one talent, and I'm okay with it being writing. Let's just be honest.
You do have an excellent it's not only with writing but with editing. You are an like phenomenal. Your eye for detail in editing and the way you deliver the critiques, that is a talent in and of itself. Because at least for me, it has really, it takes a special kind of skill to deliver critiques, and I think that you're phenomenal at it. But
Well, thank you.
with
And
that said,
it's kind of funny to link that to what I was mentioning earlier, how I put that timeline together. Um, when I was looking at all these different drafts with the umpteen different titles that I had for all these different stories,
yeah,
I barely remembered half of them without like having to look them up. Um, but like little known fact for me, and I don't think a lot of writers do this, but what I do between the first and second draft of a story, I will completely rewrite. So like once I finish the draft one, then I go back into draft two, I start from scratch. So I have two monitors up, I'll have the finished draft on one side and then the new draft on the next.
yeah,
And I write each chapter anew. Yeah, a lot of the words still stay the same. A lot of the dialogue stays the same. The plot beats stay the same. But for me, that is how I edit, or how I did learn how to edit.
yeah,
Because when you start, like if you're looking at the same page over and over and over again, you lose focus, or at least I would lose focus on it, and
mhm,
I would miss stuff. But when you have to write from scratch, you start to catch things. Like you
yeah,
catch that grammar, you catch that syntax. That's how I used to do it. Now that I kind of know what I'm doing a little bit, like with this latest version of the Godsblood Tragedy, and then book 2, which is called Lady Drake Slayer, and then I started book 3, which is called Shatterstorm, this year. I am drafting far more cleanly in the first draft. It's
mm,
not even rough anymore because I've kind of honed my voice, my writing prose style, and
yeah,
the way I want to tell or use my sentence structure. I've kind of honed in on that finally with the last 3, this version, and then the last 3 stories, that it just kind of feels natural for me now. When I
yeah,
go back to look at so like Shatterstorm book 3, which is I'm writing, um, the main plot of it is actually the second book of a trilogy that I originally wrote, like of the original trilogy of my original story, from 2007. I actually finished the trilogy. The main plot is of book 3 now is the second book of that original trilogy, or at least
right,
the biggest part of the plot. And I go back and look at those scenes that I know I'm going to throw in there because I keep everything, and I know what scenes I'm going to reuse, and I'm just like, shit, this writing is terrible. Like, this is rough. And then it's funny because these old versions that I was looking at, like the second book of that trilogy was 191,000 words. If I'm thinking, like, if I probably can use maybe 70,000 of those words,
oh wow,
maybe. Um, that's being generous.
wow,
Um, because there is just not good writing, in my opinion. It's not my style. It's not, the voice. It's not the tone. And to Tim's point, the older versions, each point of view sounded the exact same, male or female, or what have you. They all sounded very similar. One of the things that I strove to do with the Godsblood Tragedy was I have 4 main points of view in this book, plus
mhm,
2 smaller points of view. And then I don't know how many umpteen different side characters. I made it my mission that each character sounded distinct. Um, like they each, and not just in their tones and their behaviors, but also in how their POVs read.
right,
Um, so for example, Ash is an 18-year-old girl. She's like my main character. She is snarky in her own mind, at least. She thinks she's funny. Not everybody does in the book, which is one of the funniest things I have with writing her. She's brash. She doesn't think half the time, and she just kind of swears and does all this stuff. And she's that type of like 18-year-old that a lot of us knew when we were 18. I was that person when I was 18. That's why Ash is kind of like me as that kid, but far more capable. And then Amir is like, he's the father of Ash in this, but he's also a deposed royalty member that was killed before the story starts, and then he was reborn because there is rebirth in this world. And he is all, at whatever cost, he wants to get his city free. Like, he wants to defeat the villain. He wants to free his city and get vengeance. And he is driven. That's like, he'll do whatever he has to, even use his own daughter, which he does. So I had to make sure he was that hard as a character. I'm not that hard of a person. I'm a very brusque person, brutally honest person, but I'm not hard. That's not me. So writing somebody like that was difficult. And then on the other hand, Kadriana, who's the mother, she is a very tortured soul, mentally and physically. And that was a hard one to write for me, but she is my favorite character outside of Ash, or at least one of my top 3 favorite characters. And then there's Lojin, who is my Draken lizard person, who is just this absolute cinnamon roll. You remember when I first introduced you to Lojin in
he was my favorite
separate story. And you're like, this is my favorite character because he's just this giant cinnamon roll. He's like 8 foot tall. He has this power to go berserk, and he does, but he's just the big lovable dragon man, and he's like my cautious one. So like they're all very distinct. And then I got my sky pirate, Nina LaFleur, who is so vain, so narcissist, so all about building her legend, and she is just an absolute blast to write. So they're like all over the place. And like I said, my goal was to make sure they were all different. And that included when to mention this final version of the Godsblood Tragedy is actually 4 separate stories combined into one now. There was the OG trilogy, which was based on Bryn and Ash as 2 separate characters, which now they're one. Then there was a science fantasy I wrote that was more young adult, which is where Lojin and Amir came from, where it had the floating fortress and, the city. And then a noir that I wrote, a fantasy noir, that is kind of like the plot, most of the plot of book 2, but that magic system is what I brought into this one. And then a completely separate story that where the concept of eminence and the crystal and the floating city came from, which was, a rune magic series. And the reason why I combine them all together is because apparently I like elemental and crystal magic, and all 4 of these books somehow had all of that in there without me even trying. And then it just kind of worked out. I was like, oh, you know what? I have to do this, combine them. But I had to cull so many characters and combine characters because I had too many like redundant characters. So I had to, start combining stuff, which is kind of interesting because like there's a character in the Godsblood Tragedy, which his name is Finis. Finn is completely different to what the Finn character of my OG trilogy was. So like their personalities are completely different. So it's going to be fun writing that 3rd book with Finn using that plot line still, because Finn is different now. Like he's just a different type of character.
Okay. You know, for anyone who's thinking about writing, yeah, this book has a lot of intricacy too with what's going on with the plot because it's you mentioned it's a heist, and it's got a
Mhm.
lot of it's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
So with that said, how do you balance all that? How do you keep track of that? What kind of system do you use? What
Um,
give us some insight into Bill's brain.
no. Well, okay. So I'm a project manager by trade, by career. Um, so I have a nice, good spreadsheet that I have that has everything organized. Um, but yeah, it's funny you bring that up, and I kind of mentioned it that these were four separate stories, but
Mhm.
there were so many elements that were the same. Like I don't know why, but like the crystal magic of Final Fantasy has always been something I've liked.
Yeah.
You know, and the even though I don't play, like the Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, but I did play RPG games back in the day, like specifically Final Fantasy. The building up with this, like the stamina and the strength and all that stuff, and then the elemental
Yeah.
magic has always been a staple for me. And somehow I created four separate magic systems based with those like kind of elements. And, you know, when I was writing these different stories, I was trying to make them so different. And then I just realized, like, no, they don't have to be different. The story could be the same thing or one story if I bring them all together in a good way. And to get to that point, and this is, I think, where a lot of some, or just from talking to other authors and hearing their stories, and this is where we can, as authors, get lost in the weeds. We come up with all this lore and backstory and world building. 90% of it is just for us to be able to write. You know,
Mhm.
we don't give everything to readers. And personally, the authors that do give way too much to readers are those are the books that I get bored with.
Yeah.
That when they start to sound like textbooks or encyclopedias, that's when I start zoning out and not become paying attention to. So keeping those things separate, knowing what the history is, knowing the lore in your mind or in your spreadsheets or however you do it, you use Scrivener or whatever app you have, using that, but knowing that only 10 to 20% of that's going to go into the page or onto the page is, I think, what the most important thing about being an author is knowing
Yeah.
how much restraint to use. Because I could tell you, looking at all these other books that I have, all the like a lot of the different character traits, a lot of the different magic traits, a lot of the different world stuff, but nobody cares about that. Or I mean, some person might care, but for the most part, not everybody's going to care about certain intricacies. So
Yeah.
it's learning how to parse and restrain yourself with that. But also, you have to know that stuff because what if you chop a character's arm off, um, and you forget about that, when you're writing book two, and they hold their hands up, but they are only supposed to have one. If you don't mark that down, um,
Right.
you got to make sure you remember that type of stuff, especially if you're mean to your characters and stuff like that happens, or injuries happen and stuff like that. Um, so it's important to maintain that type of lore somewhere.
Yeah, with the use spreadsheets, you mentioned like Scrivener and whatever. There's a lot out there. I think personally, I think also part of the danger as a writer is to get too invested in the method of tracking things, and
Absolutely.
so
Oh,
it's got to it.
absolutely.
You've got to you've got to realize that the story is first and foremost, and figure out early on, and as a maturity as that you attain as a writer is to recognize what's going to work for me and stick with it, uh,
Yeah.
and and not have to constantly reinvent the wheel, uh, as you're going through every story, just because it's it's fun. It's fun to explore and get distracted by
Well,
the new
you
ways
make
of
a
doing
good
things.
point because it's also a hard thing to do, especially for people the authors like me. I'm very much a pantster slash planster. I'm not a plotter. I have the very basics of an idea of what the scenes are going to be, and then I just let the scene take me.
Mhm.
Like I have to let the characters just speak how the characters are going to speak and do what they're going to do. Um, However, when you're writing a series, especially when you get into the second, third book, you have those cool ideas, and you're like, oh shit, I wish I could have put that in book
Right.
one as kind of like an Easter egg almost.
Yeah.
And luckily, um, because I had to wait so long for my cover, I was able to write book two and was able to start book three before I even released, the Godsblood Tragedy.
Yeah.
So by the time I'm about 50,000 words into book three, so that's about one third, one fourth of the way through, give or take, however long it might be. It might be one fourth at this point. Um, most of my ideas for the rest of the series are kind of laid out.
Yeah.
So I was able to go back and add those hints. Like I'm going to be honest, and this I'm not going to spoil anything for people who haven't read the Godsblood Tragedy yet, but I have meddling gods, right? One of my favorite tropes is meddling gods. I mean I'm a fan of classical literature, the Greek and Romans with the pantheon and everything. And funny aside, there was a version of the God's Blood Tragedy where it was based in ancient Rome, like an alt Rome. I actually used the Roman pantheon, so I had Jupiter and Juno as one of the main goddesses and stuff. And you'll see that in the architecture. So I mentioned, I use a lot of Latin phrases and stuff in this series. But anyway, the meddling gods were always something in this. But I had this idea when I was writing book two, and it completely flips the idea of the gods in this series, in this world. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I was able to go back and edit it in book one to
Oh.
foreshadow this reveal.
Oh.
Because it would have just like it's such a good reveal in my my mind, obviously, that to retcon would have just been kind of ugly. But luckily I was able to do it before releasing this into the world. And now I was able to do it. And there are hints if you're into that type of stuff.
Right.
You could probably piece together what some of these hints might be of what might come.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Whoa. Oh no, it's that time
Well,
again.
this time again.
Oh, it's question time again. Okay, you have done question 10. Which shall you choose? The goblet, the crown, the bag of gold, the crystal ball? What shall you choose? What will be your question, Bill?
Is that a key at number 4?
Yes, it's a key.
All right. Well, let's unlock the secret scribes. We're unlocking something. We're doing an anthology. I'm not taking part, but
What's a pet peeve that drives
oh,
you absolutely crazy, but might seem trivial to others? Give us a little hint into what drives Bill nuts.
okay.
That
I am one of those people that hate mouth noises. Um, when people smack their lips or like chew when there's like a lot of ugh. Yeah,
yeah.
like that ugh, ugh, ugh. And yeah, like that stuff drives me insane. Like that, like I would rather, hi Mike, I would rather go sit in a corner than be by people like chewing loudly and eating and stuff like that. So like, that's my pet peeve.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So that might be seem trivial to others. Surprisingly, that does bother me too. But not as much as it bothers you. All right. So that was my question. We have a few more left, but I want to get back to the book. So let's see. Where's the little thingy? Here we go. There we go. Okay. My question then, my next question, because this
Okay.
is 17 years in the making, because you have, and I've been along for part of that journey, so I know how tough this has been. Have you always had your sights set on indie publishing, or
Nope.
what
Um,
happened? How did this get out in the world?
how did we get to this point?
Yes.
Okay. So when I started writing this book, or the version of this book, first version of this book, it was 2006, 2007 era. I was a senior in college and I was working in uh, an archaeology museum.
Mhm.
I was working in their library because my degree was I had a double major in classics and anthropology, mainly for classical archaeology. And I was working in this museum, and all I was doing was cataloging books. Boring as hell, right? But I'm a huge fan of fantasy, and and I don't know what made me decide to start writing, but I was supposed to be working, and I started writing this story while I was working. And I had just like started getting into learning about the industry. And the goal then, as it is with most authors that are just starting out, or even now that have been doing it for a long time, is to go trad pub. It's to find that agent, to get that big sale, and become big and famous and have your name on the bestsellers list and all that good stuff. Well, I looked at that first draft, or that first book earlier today, and how bad it is. Yeah, there was no way I was getting an agent with that story. Although I want to put a caveat. That original story was it had a very good love story angle in it that it might really qualify as a romantasy at this point. Like if I look
Mm.
back at that, it might really be a good romantasy, if with some editing, obviously. But that is kind of funny. Uh, but yeah, the writing was not good. Like when I finally finished it, around 2010, 2011, give or take. And it was a good exercise, but it was not a good story. It was very basic. Um, like I said, I grew up on Terry Brooks. So the stories that I liked at the time were adventure stories, like going on a quest type thing, especially to new lands. That's one of the things that is a staple of Terry Brooks, is like they're always going to an uncharted land and all this stuff. And I love that. I ate that up, and that's kind of what the story was. But there was nothing to set it apart. So I did the query thing, and this was early 2010. So this was, they still did snail mail. So I, printed out some, the copies, and I typed out the letter and printed it out and sent it to agents, in the mail.
Right.
Nothing, got nothing. Right. And that's okay. I had to learn. It wasn't until I moved to Texas in 2016. It was the year before we met. So I'm from Chicago area, and surprisingly, there's not, or at least still haven't found a good writing community in the Chicago area. But when I got to Texas, Texas has what's called the Writers League of Texas. It's a huge statewide organization that has local chapters, and they would meet up like every Wednesday at a bookstore, and they would have little classes and talks and all that stuff. So I started going to that, and that's when I really started learning about the industry a lot more. Like they had agents show up. They have a yearly conference where I met my first writer friend Amanda there in 2016. You and then when me and you started working together, we went to the 2017 version or
Yeah.
2018 version. We went to other writer conferences, and I still tried to do the agent thing. You know, it was it was the thing to do. You know, we still want to do it. We still want to get famous. The pitch parties on Twitter. That's when I joined Twitter. Went through all that good stuff,
Hmm.
and then like I got a couple hits. Like so, I took that trilogy that I wrote, and then I started pulling characters out and making their own self standalone stories. And
Yeah.
Ash was one of them. If you recall, that's the first one you read was the Ash
Yeah.
story. I pulled her whole arc out of the trilogy and wrote a standalone story. And I actually got, you know, some requests on it, you know, agent requests, partials and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't really go farther than that. And okay, you know, I moved on. I started writing. That's when I started writing the science fantasy. I queried that. I got a couple of requests. That's as far as it went. Then I started writing the noir. Got a couple of requests on that. Didn't go anywhere. And then what really solidified it for me, and you know this, Dewey, because involves you. But for everyone out there, when I approached Dewey about taking the Tenacious Tale of Tana the Tender Sword and doing it as a writing duo, the idea in my mind, I believed in Dewey's creation so much that I knew that it was going to find its base. Like I knew it. I just knew that this story was going to get us somewhere. So we worked on it together and we got it to its final point, which is where it's at now with our publication. But we queried it. I convinced Dewey to let me query it, and it got nothing. And I'm baffled. Like I mean, I know I'm biased because it's my story or our story, and everything. But like that book was literally, I don't know how many agents, white whales. You remember, I showed you all of their MSLs or whatever they call it, the wish lists. And there was
Yeah.
at least a dozen agents that were like, I want this type of story. And we gave it to them and we didn't get anything out of it.
Yeah.
So that in my mind solidified that Trad Pub was a dead done deal for me. That if I couldn't even get this amazing middle grade story that people are looking for out, then it's like, you know what, I'm gonna go indie pub with both these stories. Then we're gonna work on it and make them exactly how we want.
Hmm.
Because the problem with epic fantasy and adult fantasy is word count. Um, there's that magic 120,000 words that these agents live and die by for the most part. And this story, the Godsblood Tragedy, is 170,000 words. I tried multiple times, if you look at this list, to stay under 120,000 on all these ones, and it was never complete. It was never a complete story because I had to cut so much.
Yeah.
So I needed to finally go my own path and make it my way, how I want that story to be. And I'm so glad we made that decision. With Tana and with the TGT here, like I'm so glad I did that because both the books are better for it.
I agree. Well, I mean, I might be biased, but logically, I agree with that. I think what Bill is leaving out is that I was like, I'm done with you. I'm done. Not Bill, but I'm done with the traditional publishing. That whole thing.
Oh
I
yeah.
was just like, yeah, I'm done. I don't have time for this. All these people have their own agenda. I'm not gonna. I don't want to even deal with it anymore. So, um, what I think changed to make it happen for both for not only TGT but for Tana too is that the landscape of indie publishing like KDP wise, like
Yeah.
you using Amazon KDP, using Ingram, that the difficulty in actually doing it, even though it is, make no mistake, it's ridiculous as far as like all the different things you have to do to get everything just perfect. But the it became a lot easier than versus say 2018 or in 2017. It was much more difficult back then, and then just now it's becoming simpler. So
Yeah.
um, I think that really helped, and I would encourage any author that has a book out there that they believe in, that their heart is in, that they they know is right and they know is ready to go the indie route and to try it.
Yeah,
Just
and I don't want. I would say caution.
but yes, I
If
was
you're
going
going
to
to go
say
into it, if you're going into it expecting to make money, you're not going to make money in this. We're doing this for the stories. Um, I mean,
exactly.
yeah, there are the names, the big names in the indie community that are making money hand over foot, and we can all name them left and right because there's only a handful of them. But for the most of us, it's just we're doing this because we have the passion
Yeah.
and we want our stories to be read. So, and that's I was talking about this on the Secret Stripe Discord earlier too, because we were talking about the querying versus indie, and it's so much more enjoyable on, like, even though there's the drama on the social medias at all times, people are the hot takes and trying to stir up drama. Having the indie community is so supportive and so much fun to be around 90% of the time. Whereas the querying authors, like it just feels disappointed. Like all of them just feel so disappointed and unhappy because they're not getting getting what they want, which
Yeah.
is, to get their books out there. So like it's a palpable difference between the querying side of social media versus the indie side of social media. And I don't like social media. I don't. You wouldn't know that from how I interact with a lot of people on it. But I'm having more fun now than when I joined years ago and we were going through the query process. Like then that was a chore. Like doing those pitch parties, doing all that crap was just not fun. Now it's at least, there's just so much outpouring of support and just hype and like that's cool. Like that's
Yeah.
fun.
I'm going to put this back up. Tim here said that having the freedom to just do it yourself is awesome. I'm going to add to that the satisfaction that comes with it because, like you just said, and I was going to, for my recommendation, add a caution because do your due diligence in the research. Make sure that you understand what's involved and be realistic. Be realistic with the outcome and that you're going to have to be out there. If you want this to be in people's hands, you're going to have to do the job. I mean, Bill is not saying it, but he is the architect of why Tana is out there. And so he's been tireless about it. He's and without that though, just because you put your book out there, it's not going to be known. So just be realistic
Yeah.
about what you're doing with your indie publishing. But conversely, it's the same if you have an agent. You have to really get out there and hustle
Yep.
and make sure that your book is known. But I would say the pitch parties, I remember those, the pitch parties and doing all of that. You're constantly waiting for someone else's approval to heart it or to whatever, and to have some agent maybe just like glow and say, "Oh, I love this," and reach out to you.
Yep.
Versus now, it's like I've got full control. I have the freedom to do it just as I want to do it, and
Yeah.
it's out there, and we're good.
Yep.
I I have a few more questions for you. Are we going to keep this at it? Do we want to keep it at an hour or just keep talking until we're done?
We can keep going for a little bit longer. I got time.
Just want to make sure. So
We got
But
time and a little bit
before,
more scotch. We're good.
good. Before we do, it's that time again. It is. Hold on, let me hide this. We are gonna look at our questions here. So you have asked question for the key and the dragon. What is next for
What
you?
is number 9?
Number 9. I I don't know what that is. What is that? It looks no.
Okay. We'll just go with number 1 since I got the scotch going. We'll go with the goblet.
Okay. If you can invite any 3 of your characters from the Godsblood Tragedy and Tana to a dinner party, who would you invite and why? And what do you think they'd talk about? And for those out there that may be just kind of picking up on this, and we're going to talk about it after this question, Bill is also a middle grade author with me.
Oh my god.
So
That
are you okay? I think I threw him because he knows how the
No, that's a good one, and I apologize because I'm just getting over bronchitis, so that's why I'm coughing up a storm. But that's a good question because the God's Blood Tragedy and Tana are on completely different sides of the spectrum of
yeah.
stories and age appropriateness. So okay, I think it's got to be 3. Can I just do 2 because I think this is going to be the perfect one?
Okay, all right. Do 2.
So I'm going to take from the God's Blood Tragedy Captain Nina LaFleur, who is the most dashing, daring, and egoless smuggler in all the Mistlands, and Farnsworth.
Oh, okay.
Good old Farnsworth, the rapscallion gouge hunter who likes to tell stories. And the reason why I would invite them both is because I would like to see who can outstory the other person.
That's interesting. Wow, I hadn't thought of that. Here, let me
And
look
then
at
who
this.
would steal the most money between the 2 of them?
Look what Tim said. And Ash.
I don't know about that, Tim. I think Tana would try to want to impress Ash, and Ash would be like, "Go away! You're too annoying." Just because Ash is 18, like she's an 18, like she's just such an 18-year-old jerk. Like, Tana's just too pure for the God's Blood Tragedy.
All right. So that's perfect. I'm glad you chose one because it's going to lead to my next question, which is going to be, let me get us back here. There we oh no, this one. You have a challenging path, which is you're an adult fantasy author and you're a middle grade author. And I I'm sure I think maybe even there was a comment earlier about it, how, you know, if you've read both Tana and you've read Gospel Tragedy, how they're like
Yeah.
completely different. What do you do to kind of just regulate yourself and to keep yourself in that adult mindset versus the middle grade? Like, do you have a problem with it? T- tell us.
It's interesting because when we started working on, so when me and Dewey started working together as, critique partners 7 years ago, the only middle grade story I've ever read in my life was The Hobbit. Because by the time I was in middle grade, 6th grade, I was already reading genre. I was already reading Lord of the Rings. I started by 7th and 8th grade, I started getting into Wheel of Time, started getting into Game of Thrones, that type of stuff. So I was already reading the adult fantasy books of the time. And, my dad also had the Robert Jordan Conan books. you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
from back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, where you know, had that Nikki Booby pictures in, because that's what they
Franzetta.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pulpy with the boobs. Um, so I was already started reading that stuff. So I didn't really know much about middle grade at the time. Like, it just wasn't my thing. Like, yeah, I was in middle grade when good old Harry Potter came out. Like, ugh, ugh, whatever. Didn't read it. Like, I only read the first book, and everyone was like, "Oh, you love fantasy? Why wouldn't you read that?" Just not my thing. So what I'm trying to say is, when we started working together, it was like a new experience learning for me, and it helped me as a writer, because the thing about middle grade is there is a complete lack of character agency in middle grade books. We talked about this, you know, ad nauseum, Dewey, and I don't think a lot of people know this, because not a lot of people write middle grade books or even read middle grade books as adults. Um, a middle grade book, like, the easiest way to describe it is the plot moves the characters. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, in young adult to new adult to adult, it's the characters that are predominantly moving the plot. Yeah, the plot still is the driving force, but character motivation and character agency is a huge thing in adult, whereas in middle grade, it's not. And actually learning that difference helped me become a better writer, because I was able to identify plot versus character motivation, and how characters interact with the scene or the plot as it goes forward. So that helped me. But I will say, when we started working together, you know, in around 2020-ish, 2021, that's when my son was born, in 2021. And yeah, I was able to start, like, separating the mindset. But now that I became a parent, like, and you know, the parents out there will know this, you're still an adult. You still I still swear all the time, but I don't do it around my son. You know, I have a very dark sense of humor, but I don't make jokes like that around my son. So, like, I liken writing my adult stuff as being the parent, and writing the middle grade stuff as being around the parent, or being around the kid. Whereas I have to separate the mindset. But when it comes to the actual writing, it's the same thing for me. It's the story is the story, and the characters are within the story, and I just have to make sure that both of them meld together right.
Do you find it? Are you surprised? Like, like think back to 2017. Would you, and today, are you would your 2017 self be surprised?
Maybe. I don't
Maybe.
know. It's hard to say, because the evolution of my writing style was helped by our critique partnership.
Hmm.
Just in how, so for everyone out there, how me and Dewey work, we just bounce ideas. Like, we can, like, if y'all weren't here and we were just talking about book 2 of Tana, we would just be shooting ideas back and forth of, you know, scenes. And that's exactly how we plotted book 2, is we got on a call like this and just came up with ideas. That helped me tremendously in my writing growth. You know, just being able to tell the story effectively.
Hmm.
So maybe I'd be surprised where I'm at now, but it wouldn't be the same without it, though.
Yeah. Huh.
And then, like I said earlier, it's knowing how character agency works in middle grade helped me focus on character agency in the adult side of things too.
I agree. I think that. I mean, I've seen your growth. I mean, not And I mean that in the most loving way. It's not. I don't mean that like, oh, he's really grown. No, no, no. I've seen your evolution. There, that's a better word. I've seen the evolution of your perspective on your own story, and as well as with Tana. I mean, Tana. You're right. It's it is it's a story that is all about that big plot, but you know, uh, with Galdefort and Tana, you've got a unique. It's a focus on relationships. It's focus on friendship, and it's all of that. But it's not anything deeper than that, except that. It's very, it's all about their development as friends,
Yeah.
and his ability to learn to trust versus an adult. It would be what is I had this trauma that has informed my ability to trust. Uh,
Yeah.
well, and I guess Galafort's kind of whatever. In you're right. I think it's interesting because when we are talking, you and I, when we're together, and we're just throwing out
Hmm.
ideas, and we're doing the magic I call it of story building. It's really pretty incredible. It's one of those things where you leave and your whole body is, or at least for me, my whole body is just like, "Whew, I'm ready to
Yeah.
I'm
And,
ready to
and
do
you know,
this." And
I would say, and you are definitely like right up like there with getting me to this point, no question whatsoever. But I also have to credit the other couple of people that I became critique partners at the same time.
oh, absolutely.
Claire, she's a young adult science fiction fantasy writer who has been trad published. She has a couple books out. She really helped me so much with character agency and character motivation. And then Sam Parrish, my other good critique partner, who I still work with all the time. I text her, daily almost. Um, she is an indie author. She has 2 books out and all that stuff. Um, just between the three of you, truly have really made this process so much easier and this growth happen because of the different ways that we work. You and I, we're the idea generator. Claire is Claire has always been great from the story perspective, like
Yeah.
the grammar, the keeping
The
close,
agency. She's
the
very
agency and the motivations and keeping the focus on that. And Sam has always been great about just the general story ideas, like she will read everything I send her way, and she will be like, okay, this works, this doesn't work, this, you think about this type, like the big holistic stuff. So it's like it's great to have those different mindsets, and that has really helped me get to where I'm at. But it also helps because all three of you write completely different stories. You with middle grade, Claire with young adult, and Sam with adult kind of epic fantasy, D&D style. So it's all very different, and it's all come together in my own writing, because obviously I write middle grade and these epic dark stories with all those other kinds of concepts and ideas. So
yeah.
it's been a perfect, what's the word, like a perfect storm, so to speak, of getting the right people around me to be able to get to this point.
Yeah. And you're a synthesis. There's a synthesis occurring where you're
Osmosis.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do want to just ask one more question, but like question about the book that
Yeah.
the birthday
The
today's
birthday book.
birthday the birthday book. But before we do, we got one more.
Oh, okay.
We got one more. Okay, so we have done
Let's
uh
go with number 5 with the battle
number
axe.
5. All right, here we go. Do you have any quirky writing rituals or habits that you swear by, even if they seem a bit odd to others?
I don't think it's quirky. You know, I already mentioned it. I rewrite second draft from scratch for the most part. Um,
Mm,
I am definitely better writing with music on, with
okay.
lyrics. I know a lot of people can't write with music, or if they do, that it has to be non-lyrical music.
Do you mind
Um,
sharing what you listen to?
oh, it
Like,
depends on the scene. It absolutely
okay,
depends on the scene and who I'm writing.
okay,
Um, if I'm writing something dark, which, the Cadriana character, most of her plot and most of her scenes are pretty dark because she's full of torture and drama, like or trauma. Um, I would go with death metal. Like I would listen to death metal and stuff like that. Um, I really got into this past year. I really got into like the Viking death metal, or like the like Sabaton or Wind Rose. They're kind of like they got like almost a fantasy vibe to them with
yeah,
their death metal. Um, but when I'm doing like somebody like Nina LaFleur, who is just swearing left and right, she's a sky pirate. She thinks she's awesome. I'll just listen to fun music, like Prince or something like that. I'm all over the place. It just depends on the scene I'm going for. So
okay,
there is no set playlist for me. It's all over the place.
all right. So let me stop sharing or remove. All right, folks, let's wrap this up. I have one more question. So TGT, that the Godsblood Tragedy, is out today.
Correct.
But this is not the end. You've got some more.
No.
So you've already kind of mentioned them, but I just want you to put it out there. What's coming up? What's next?
So this is book one, or passage one, as I call it, of the Divine God's Queen Coda. It's a 4-book series. So the second book, I'm working. Lady Drake Slayer is what it's called. Uh, Tentatively looking to release around January of 2025. I am going through the edits now, gonna start doing the formatting, that fun process, to get it into the EPUB version and all that good stuff. I was hoping to release in December because my 40th birthday is in December. I thought it would be kind of a cool thing, but I don't know if it's going to be too fast for that. But then book 3, which is called Shatterstorm, I'm currently writing it. So hopefully release around this time next year. So in the summer of 2025. And then obviously once I finish that, I'll be writing book 4. Uh, I have a couple titles in mind. I'm not sure which one I'm settling with. So that will probably be around December, January of 26, give or take.
Crazy.
And then on top of that, we're writing book 2 of the Tenacious Tale, which is called The Quizzical Quandary of Tana, what are we calling her in this one? Quest
The
Seeker.
tenacious?
Yeah.
No, Tana the Tenacious.
Oh, is that what
Yeah,
we're going with? Okay.
that's her title. Yeah.
Yeah. Tana the Tenacious, which is book 2 we're writing now, or
Yes.
Dewey's starting writing it. And I'll do my
We're
pass here
working
soon.
on it.
And then, so we're hoping that'll be out maybe spring, early summer of 2025.
Yeah, I hope so. 2025.
That's the
Oh,
goal.
well, yeah, 2025 for sure. So you got a lot going on. This is just crazy, but I'm going to throw out there that it's a lot quicker to get everything out like we're doing versus traditional publishing. That's another perk, is that you can
Very
control
true.
your timeline, you can control your quality control. You can just get them out. get them out into the wild. Well, that
Do we
brings
want to
us.
see if anybody has any questions in the audience?
We'll do
Mr. Wolf,
yes.
who might be the only one still with us.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? I would love to see. Let's go ahead and switch this back. Give him a little bit here. I don't. Oh, thank you. There, I'm going to
Yeah,
post
thanks,
that.
Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, I think that's it though.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's okay. You answered a lot there. Getting some excitement going for the Godsblood Tragedy, which is you got to get your copy. In fact, starting, I know this is going to date the video, but tomorrow the paperback is available too, and it should be. I'm excited. I'm excited for it. I'm really proud of you. I think this is
Thank you, Dewey.
an incredible accomplishment. So
I
and
am very, very happy.
yeah,
But yeah, as Tim says, melatonin's kicking in. It's been a long day.
it's been,
I can't. I'll be honest with everyone listening or watching or paying attention, if at all. I am so happy this book is out. I am thrilled, but I am so ready for a break. like my creative well, it needs to be refilled. I need to start writing again. Like, absolutely need to start writing like full bore. I need to
yeah.
do that to reboost, to get ready for book 2. And
Yeah.
thank you, Tim. I appreciate it, and I appreciate Bob, you guys coming, everybody else that came. This was awesome, and I hope whoever decides to read it, if you finish it, I hope you like it, and if you don't, perfectly fine. No worries. Don't feel bad. I appreciate it in all my heart. Just giving it the chance, good or bad. So thank you.
The book is The Godsblood Tragedy. It's out there now. I'm going to put, against Bill's wishes, I'm going to put the link in the description. So if you want to go check it out, get a full description of what it's all about, and maybe hit that, yeah, I want to check this out button. It's called a purchase button. Check it out. It's a great book. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
And that's
Dewey,
it.
thank you.